Why is a top-of-the-line stealth fighter costing over $150 million been nothing more than a bystander on the battlefield from start to finish? Hello everyone, this is a channel dedicated to in-depth analysis of military equipment. Today, let's discuss the awkward situation faced by the U.S. Air Force's F-22 Raptor stealth fighter during the recent U.S.-Iran conflict. According to the latest leaked military intelligence from multiple sources, the F-22 is of the U.S. Air Force's first fighter wing, deployed at Avda Air Base in Israel, have begun a phased withdrawal. The first batch of 6 aircraft has already flown back to Langley Air Force Base in the U.S. There are a total of 11 F-22s, which were deployed to the Middle East at the end of 2025. The Pentagon had originally placed high hopes on them. As the world's first fifth-generation fighter, they boast top-tier stealth capabilities and supersonic cruise capabilities. However, the reality is that this flagship weapon failed to achieve any impressive combat results during the recent military operations against Iran. A review of the battlefield records from this conflict reveals an interesting phenomenon. In the series of U.S. airstrikes against Iran, virtually all major aircraft types were deployed, from the F-15, F-16, and F-18 to the F-35, and from the B-52, B-1B, and B-2 to the A-10. Only these 11 F-22s remained idle. They neither participated in core air combat, nor played a key role in ground strikes, and they were even rarely deployed for basic combat air patrols. Some netizens joked that these Raptors had simply gone on a taxpayer-funded vacation to the Middle East. To understand why the F-22 achieved nothing, we must look back at the context of its creation. This fighter jet was a product of the late Cold War era, with a very singular design objective to hunt down Soviet fighter jets over Europe. In the 1980s, when the U.S. Air Force proposed the Advanced Tactical Fighter program, the Soviet Union was developing advanced models such as the MiG-1.44 and Su-47. U.S. assessments concluded that Soviet fifth-generation fighters would enter service in the early 21st century, threatening U.S. air superiority. Consequently, the U.S. imposed extremely stringent requirements on the project: supersonic cruise, super maneuverability, stealth capability, and beyond visual range air combat capability, the so-called 4S standard. Lockheed Martin delivered a near-perfect solution, the F-22A. Every performance metric of this fighter represented the pinnacle of aviation at the time, and it was once regarded as a symbol of U.S. global military hegemony. However, this highly specialized design came at a heavy cost. The F-22A's core capabilities were entirely focused on gaining air superiority, leaving almost no room for multi-role operations. Early models could not even carry conventional bombs for ground attacks. Later, the U.S. military conducted a minor upgrade, enabling it to carry GBU-39 small-diameter bombs in the main weapons bay. However, with a payload of only about 23 kilograms, these bombs had very limited destructive power against fortified targets. In other words, a stealth fighter costing over $150 million had ground attack capabilities inferior to some older attack aircraft. So, what role was the F-22 originally intended to play in this conflict? According to the original plan, its core mission was to gain air superiority, destroying enemy air power in the early stages of the war to clear the way for follow-on bombers and attack aircraft. However, in reality, the Iranian Air Force was virtually crippled almost instantly under intense U.S. air strikes, and its fighter force quickly lost most of its combat capability. The remaining aerial threat came primarily from Iran's large fleet of drones. Against these slow-moving, low-flying drones, the F-22's high-altitude, high-speed advantages and stealth capabilities were rendered useless. To use an analogy, it would be like using a high-precision sniper rifle to swat a fly. It's not that it can't be done, but the cost is completely disproportionate. Meanwhile, other mainstay U.S. military aircraft performed exceptionally well in their respective roles. Leveraging its advanced mission systems and information fusion capabilities, the F-35A carried out ground attack missions while also serving as a frontline air command node. B-52H strategic bombers even flew directly over Iranian airspace to drop guided bombs, signaling that Iran's air defense system had been severely weakened. Even the A-10 attack aircraft, which many had mocked, played a role in low-altitude ground support missions. Only the F-22A, touted as the world's most powerful stealth air superiority fighter, was virtually rendered useless throughout the entire conflict. However, the F-22A's predicament goes beyond simply having no role to play. More troubling is that these expensive aircraft are themselves facing very real security threats. According to multiple reports, Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, where U.S. forces are stationed, was recently attacked by Iranian missiles and drones. During the attack, a U.S. Air Force E-3G early warning aircraft was destroyed, and several refueling aircraft were damaged. Satellite imagery shows that the mid to rear section of the E-3's fuselage was completely obliterated, with its iconic rotating radar dome scattered on the ground. It is important to note that the U.S. Air Force currently has only 16 times 10 to the power of -3 early warning aircraft in active service, and the replacement cost for a single aircraft is reportedly over $700 million. Such a loss is undoubtedly a severe blow. This incident has served as a wake-up call for the U.S. military. If Iran can use missiles and drones to precisely strike an E-3 parked on the ground, then the F-22 fighters stationed at Israel's Avda air base are theoretically at risk of being targeted as well. Although these F-22s possess formidable stealth capabilities in the air, once parked on the ground, they are just as vulnerable as any other fighter jet. Faced with the real threat posed by Iranian ballistic missiles and drone swarms, the U.S. military opted for the safest course of action, withdrawing this batch of F-22s from the Middle East and returning them to the U.S. mainland. From a tactical perspective, this is undoubtedly a wise move. After all, no commander would willingly expose cutting-edge equipment worth over $150 million to unnecessary risks. To be fair, the F-22's predicament is not a fault of the aircraft itself. Its design excellently fulfilled the objectives set at the time, to overwhelm any Soviet opponent in aerial combat. The problem is that the nature of warfare has changed. On today's battlefield, air combat is no longer a symmetrical contest between two air forces, but rather a complex, integrated confrontation involving multi-domain warfare, unmanned systems, and information warfare. A weapons system tailored for a specific adversary, a specific battlefield, and a specific mission will naturally struggle when faced with a completely different form of warfare. This actually raises a deeper question. On future battlefields, how much room for survival remains for high-end platforms like the F-22 that are specialized in one thing? When an air superiority fighter costing over $150 million finds itself with no airspace to dominate and unable to unleash its full potential, how should its value be measured? Perhaps the greatest lesson this conflict has taught militaries worldwide is not the success or failure of any particular aircraft, but rather a re-evaluation of the philosophy of weapons design. The battlefield waits for no one. No matter how well crafted the playbook from the Cold War era may be, it may not provide the right answers to today's challenges. In any case, this batch of F-22s has already begun its journey back to Virginia. After their departure, the skies over the Middle East remain bustling. F-35s, B-52s, A-10s, and various drones continue to carry out their respective missions. As for those Raptors, perhaps the next time they are truly put to use will be on a completely different battlefield, facing a completely different adversary. But for this conflict, they were destined to be nothing more than fleeting visitors.